Okay, not a problem. Okay, good morning again to all the colleagues who have joined us today. Please kindly note that this workshop is being recorded, and welcome to the Research Capacity Development Unit at the Postgraduate School here at the University of Johannesburg. My name is Lawrence, and I am delighted to be your moderator for today's workshop. So before we can begin, I'd just like to thank all the participants who have joined us for today's workshop, and most importantly, our facilitator for today, Dr. Pumuza Langa, for honoring our invite and for taking his time to join us and to present on such an important topic. Before we can begin, I would just like to go over a few housekeeping rules. If you do have any question during the session, please kindly raise your virtual hands, or you can either also type the question in the chat box or your contribution. If you do want to speak, you can just raise your hand and we'll allow your mic. And as I have indicated that this session is being recorded and the presentation slide together with the workshop recording will be shared with all the participants on our model communities as well as on our RCD MS management system. And please kindly note that if you joined the workshop through the Research Capacity Development Management System, you will be able to fill in your feedback survey on there, and you can be able to download your certificate of attendance, as I would have stated in the invitation email for this workshop, that if you did join through the Research Capacity Development Management System, you will be eligible to get your certificate of attendance. So in that regard, please kindly allow me to read over Dr. Pumuzo Langa's bio before we can begin in your hearing. Dr. Pumuzo Langa is currently employed as the senior manager at the commercial analyst at the University of Johannesburg Technology Transfer Office. He has a PhD in operation management from UJ with the study focusing on dynamic capability developed by innovative entrepreneurial enterprises from technology business incubation services. His initial career was in biotechnology, startup company Kaba Biotech as a laboratory technician in the DNA sequencing laboratory after completing his studies in life sciences related qualification. Then he moved on to management studies, studying up with BCom in management and a master's in organizing leadership. He has 15 years of experience within the field of innovation management, where he has played various roles in intellectual property, commercialization in several publicly financed research and development institutions in South Africa. These include being previously employed at the R&D Outcome Manager at the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, responsible for IP commercialization matters within the Material Science Manufacturing Unit, followed by being a commercialization manager at the University of Pretoria, where you are responsible for a wide range of technology transfer aspects such as IP license, seed fund management, and business plan development. His research interests are within the field of strategic management of technological innovations, with a particular focus on IP commercialization, business incubation, spin out companies, and technology transfer at large. So, without any further ado, please kindly allow me to hand over to our facilitator, Dr. Pomoza Langa. Thank you so much. You may proceed.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Much appreciated. And good morning, colleagues. So really excited to be part of the session today, and hopefully we can get through some of the important things around entrepreneurship support in general, and I suppose a bit more specific, or I suppose particularly to UJ. And of course, I know that most colleagues are maybe doing their, of course, post-grad and so on. And there's obviously the whole element of the formal, research-based approach to things. But in this instance, we'll just take a more pragmatic approach where, you know, um, how we run the program at UJ at the Tech Transfer Office, I suppose more than it is about the theory behind entrepreneurship support and 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 so on. Hello, can you hear me? Am I still audible, Lawrence?
Yes, Doc, you are audible. I can hear you now. Can the participants please kindly indicate with a thumbs up if you can hear Dr. Pomuza? Yes, perfect. You can proceed, Doc. We can hear you.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, that's fine. And I suppose even before I share my slide, the thinking, of course, or the approach is that given that it's more of a discussion as well, please feel free at any time to ask a question. Of course, as the other the house rules and so on. And but I'm more than okay with us having the occasional um, sort of interjection in between. It's not necessarily that I'll go through everything and then you ask at the end. Please feel free to do the asking and discussions in between.
Okay, so if the participants do have any question during the session, you can always raise your hand and I will unmute your mic and you can go ahead and speak, or you can type them in the chat box, then I'll indicate them to the presenter as well. Thank you. Yeah, we can proceed.
Okay. Um, Let me just share my screen in that case and we take it from there.
Dr. Pomuza, you are cutting there. I
Yes,
don't know.
I'm sharing my screen. Sorry, I'm just silent.
Okay.
Please let me know if you see it, then I can go on presenter mode, right? Is it visible?
Yes, it is visible, but not on presenter mode yet.
Okay. Okay. Is it fine? Yeah?
Not yet. Yes, perfect. It's now on presenter mode.
Okay. All right. Thank you, colleague. So the beginning of my discussion, I'm going to start it perhaps with intellectual property or IP. And the reason I want to start there is because most of the researchers or postgraduate students that or colleagues and staff, student and staff are working on their research, and most of the time there could be intellectual property that comes from that. And because before we start talking entrepreneurship, because in most instances, you might have a good project that's part of your research and want to do some entrepreneurial activity. But intellectual property, at least in a university setting, forms a basis for starting this conversation or engagement around, how you can take whatever project you have to market. But before you even understand what you have or what you can take to market, it's good to understand that there's potential intellectual property that could come from your research. In fact, every research has intellectual property, and I suppose it's more about the protectable ability, if it were, as it were, of that particular intellectual property, because intellectual property is creations of the mind. So whatever you're working on and you're creating is IP, although not all of it necessarily is is protectable through the formal protection mechanisms. But at least the starting point, the fact that you working on research and creating that, then you're generating intellectual property. So intellectual property refers to creations of the mind. So it can be inventions, it can be literary and artistic works, it can be designs, symbols, names, and images used in commerce. And sometimes, of course, some colleagues are in the industrial design space, and you can design things there and not necessarily be in the science where you're doing experimentations with chemicals and so on and making formulations. But even copyright, even as you write your thesis and you're generating copyright, authorship of words and so on. So what is interesting is that most of the time when we think about or talk about intellectual property, people think of things that are far from them, like, okay, like, oh, it's just reserved for researchers in a lab working on very specific things, but it's actually all around us. So, I mean, we do certain things on a daily basis. Like I suppose, we use soap, we use uh, tablets or phones, but I purposefully put this blank without logos or writing. But I can already imagine that as everyone looks at this image, if they think of a tablet PC, for instance, they already have a different brand or a certain brand in mind. And have you ever considered why you would have purchased that particular electronic device? Because somebody has created a trademark, which is intellectual property. So that symbol distinguishes that particular electronic device from another. And so you as a consumer already are interacting with the intellectual property because if you buy that particular electronic device, it will give you a certain features, software, and you associate certain things to it, and it's all someone's creation in which they started off either as developing a software or as developing a formulation if it's a soap that you would then prefer, and it's all creations. So I just want us not to think of intellectual property as something far from us. It's around us. We interact with it on a daily basis. Today, you interacted with intellectual property one way or another unintentionally. And and one of the slides I'd like to show is this one as well of, Michael Jackson, considered one of the greatest dancers in the world, but still was involved in creating intellectual property. He created a shoe that would allow for anti-gravity illusion. So it would seem as if he's defying the laws of gravity, but it's actually mechanically attached to a certain area in the stage, and then it would allow him to sort of pull back and not fall, but although looking as if is going towards the ground. So, I mean, even in pop culture or in the arts, you can find ways to integrate some of these things. So I mean, as so us as researchers or people in the academia, we can sort of embrace what we do in our research. Okay, but then now the question that I always get asked is how do we deal or how do we then understand intellectual property forms in the different areas that we're in? So one of the examples that I make is, for instance, if you're working in precision agriculture, you could be working on drones, for example, or trying to do temperature assessments or moisture content in the soil and so on and so forth. So you could have patents for the device, that you create if it's a drone, but then the drone will have to work on software, for instance. So the software can be protected through copyright, but then there could be a potential trademark associated with the device that you've created. So it could have a specific name and also, but even the way that it's shaped and the way it looks, this particular device, it could have a design attached to it. So even if you're working on one project and one specific sector, you could have multiple things that can give you different results, in terms of intellectual property protection rights. And of course, it's indicated, like you could protect a drone, for instance, with a patent, because a patent is specific in what it protects, or it's clear on what it protects. So it protects a principle underlying in invention. And this invention could be a new apparatus, such as a machine, could be a new product, or it could be a new method or process. But then on the other type of property class, you have what we call the trademarks. So trademarks would protect symbols such as logos, or colors and graphics that make us associate those particular graphics to a particular brand. So when you look at these particular logos already, you immediately can think of a particular brand. Then another intellectual property class would be your designs. Okay, so for instance, if you look at all these three bottles, they're all bottles. But if you start paying a closer look or paying more attention, they're shaped all different shapes. And those are particularly done to do different things. So the one is got a grip like the one in the middle. So I suppose it gives you that firm grip. The one on the left is got a um a a, a, a mechanism on top to open and close. So I suppose if you like to do road running or jogging, then you would have that liberty to close and open without necessarily screwing on a cap on and off. So for that to have been done, somebody had to think of it and design it, and so there is that ability to then to apply for protection for that. So this is the another intellectual property protection class, designs. Okay. And then maybe before I move to the next slides, is everyone still okay? You still following up about different types of intellectual property? Are you okay? Can I move? Okay, no problem. So Lawrence, please, if there's hands, please assist me because I can't see as well.
Yes, I will do so, Doc. We can proceed. I see thumbs up from the participants, so I think we can proceed.
All right, no problem.
Okay.
So what is interesting with research, and let's say you have these different intellectual property classes, as you try to migrate them towards a certain level of development so that you can have a final product, is that there's a scale which is called technology readiness levels, or TRLs. This might look like a busy table, but okay, we'll figure it out as I try to explain it a bit more in detail. So if you imagine most things that you start off with in a research would be just basic research or concept development. And so this particular table tries to show you where you would be, and it differs for different disciplines. So whether you're in science and engineering, software, ICT, medical science, it would somehow have different ways in which you measure, but somehow you're all moving towards 1 to 9. So regardless of whatever sector you're in or discipline or field, the basic idea will always be technology readiness level 1, or if you have a concept, it will always be TRL 2. It sort of somehow differs once you go up to 3 beyond the concept and starting to do some sort of proof of concept or some sort of prototype development. So, for instance, if you're having a science and engineering project, when you go to prototype early prototype, you would be doing what they call TRL 5, which means technology readiness level 5. But once you have like a validated or full a capacity vetted on full range of parts over long periods and a proven system ready for full deployment, there would be 9, TRL 9. But if you're working with something in the lab which would relate to maybe developing a drug or something that can be used medically, then it would be measured through the medical science terminology. So you would have to, for instance, take your molecule and do preclinical research. So there would be 3 and 4, but you don't do preclinical research on machines and so on. You don't do clinical trials. You do that on drugs and molecules that are intended for that. So it's good to understand where you are. Are you in phase 1 or phase 2 and so on. This helps us understand in terms of then when we're trying to raise funds or when we're trying to measure where we are in the development of the product. Because if you're going to embark on an entrepreneurial journey with your product, or at least a product that comes from your research, you have to understand where you are because funders would want to know what's still needed. Is this just some basic research? Or do you have a prototype? And this is the language that they use. And of course, as indicated, this would assist you when you're going to source some assistance. So would you need like seed funding or venture capital funding? Because for instance, if you're looking for venture capital funding, they're not going to fund you at a early stage. Sometimes they want to fund you when there's already a functional system, okay? And then just beyond funding, you would also probably need some sort of support. So I've highlighted the red things that we can at least help connect with. So, for instance, if you want incubation, the Technology Transfer Office has an incubation program. But if you need seed funding, we've got a program from the Technology Innovation Agency where we're partnering with them to disperse seed funding, and we use the TRLs to understand that. But also sometimes you might not need funding or incubation, but you might just need support for technical development. And the UJ has what we call technology stations. There's one on metal casting and one on process in engineering and environment technology station PETS. So there's those sort of things that you would have to look into. Okay, so interestingly enough, in a university setting, it's not necessarily that there's startups that get created, but also there is connections within in industry or existing entities. So once you have intellectual property, you can embark on a process for bringing intellectual property to market so that it can be exploited. This would be what we then call commercialization, or at least indirect commercialization, if you are not necessarily doing it yourself, but through an industry partner. And because intellectual property is considered property, okay, so the only difference is that it's created by the mind, but property can be built like through brick and mortar, like a house, for example. And because it is property, just like a house, intellectual property can be monetized in different ways. So you could rent your house, for instance, if you don't want to live in it, but you want to make money out of it. So an equivalent to that would be licensing. So you might build a project and a prototype, but you might not want to be the one that sells it. So you could license it to an industry partner. So you license it, if it's a new molecule, you license it to a chemicals manufacturing company, and they might want to sell it. You continue your research. And that would be what we call licensing. But then again, you might also just want to then start up the company, which is also possible. So you could venture into that. So it's what we call spin-outs. And I've highlighted these two in red because they happen very common in the university. However, there are other ways where you could find an existing company and then have a joint venture because they already have maybe equipment and machinery. You don't have the equipment and machinery in a lab, but you want to venture into that. So there could be a joint venture. Then there's another option, the fourth assignment, which we hardly ever do because that means we get rid of IP. So which is an outright sale. So sometimes you could sell the IP and then we have no further involvement in it, and then it's gone. But yeah, those are sort of the four ways in which this can be monetized. And okay, maybe dwelling on licensing, which is the one I made an example of. It's almost like renting. It happens quite commonly in the university because researchers want to stick to their research after that and find companies to license, and then they get a royalty. So in essence, by licensing, you're granting the right of use of the IP at a fee, at a royalty. So a royalty would be the same as like rent, okay? Granting access to the house, somebody pays rent, similar process. Granting IP rights from your research to a company, then they pay you a royalty. However, it's very important to be mindful of the terms that would form part of the agreement. Okay, so you have to understand where would this technology be used. Sometimes it can be a molecule, but you intend maybe to use it in the nutraceutical space, but it could also end up in the cosmetics. It could end up in the pharmaceutical. So field of use would be important. Understanding which territories, some patents that get filed end up in more than one country. So some of the projects are in the US, patents are granted there, although the IP was developed in UK. So you could be talking to a company in the US because you've got a patent granted there. But then if you've got a patent granted in a country in Europe or in the continent beyond South Africa, you could say, look, I'm only granting you the right to this particular area, which the territory could be US, but I'm not granting you the right for Europe, and so on. And so that allows you to then to have multiple partners or industry partners. Things like scope would be important. Performance would be also important because not all companies that would license your technology would perform well because they might say, okay, fine, give us the technology, but then they don't sell, then you don't get royalties. So you have to be quite stringent about that. And sometimes, interestingly enough, they can get your intellectual property or research and then make improvements. So when they make improvements, the question is who owns those improvements? Those are some of the discussions that need to be had. But eventually, in that process, there has to be consideration for duration. So how long will then this project be licensed to that party? Is it for the first 3 years, 5 years, and so on and so forth? Some of the terms which you need to consider at all times for these agreements. Okay, but then there's also what we then call spin-outs. So which is how some, not most, because mostly it's licensing, but this is how some technologies end up going to market from research, where new firms are created to exploit commercially the technology or the research results they've developed within a university. So these can be classified as academic spin-offs because then the academic wants to start it up, or it could be student spin-offs where the students get involved, or entrepreneur spin-offs where you find an external entrepreneur to assist in this new venture creation. Okay, but then let's say then you take this spin-out creation route. Most researchers would be new to entrepreneurship. So what we try to do is have entrepreneurship support mechanisms, and one of the ways in which we do it is through incubators or incubation. The University of Johannesburg Technology Transfer Office runs an incubation program. And maybe just to get on the definition side of things, so an incubator or incubators are a physical or virtual facility that support the development of early stage SMEs or ventures, okay? Through combination of business development services, funding, access to physical space necessary to conduct the business, amongst other things. They're not limited to these. But in essence, that's what an incubator is, because that would be very critical, especially in the early stages of the business, in understanding how to get support. So one of the most successful incubation programs is run by CEDA, but it's CEFTA these days. It's changed the name. And this is a bit of an old slide. That number the last time I checked was 110 instead of 101. But like, so these are government-related incubation services that are in different sectors and spaces. For example, these are some of them, but these ones focus on digital hubs in different areas, like in Nelspruit, there's the Fourth Industrial Revolution Digital Hub, or in Limpopo, where there's the digital hub, and so on. But there's a, like I said, I mean, this is from 70 to 75. I mean, there's from 1 up to 110, different areas, different sectors. So, but now there's also a trend where universities are having these incubation programs internally, and that's what we're doing to do some entrepreneurship support. Okay, here's an example of another incubator, the M Lab, which is a creative space that supports digital solution development. Okay, so well, from the tech transfer office, for instance, on our entrepreneurship support side, we have a call every year for the past 3 years, and we try to get researchers such as yourself with entrepreneur projects into our incubation. So, for instance, this year between February and March, we had a call for applications. We invited early stage innovators and researchers to apply for support through the structured incubation process that we have or hold. And that's where we are, by the way, if you want to come see us. We're not far from McDonald's, so we're right opposite there. This is an aerial picture of the TTO or Tech Transfer Office. And some of these spaces in this house are a maker space where we have our incubation program. And we're recently launching an incubation, a prototype development center called the Unipod, which was funded by the United Nations Development Program. So if you have something to do with electronics as well, or 3D printing and prototyping, you can do it there. And this is how the call looked like. So, we provide services in a structured manner, such as hot desking. So also if you have like just a need for spending time in working on your business, you come there. There's a maker space as indicated. There's also entrepreneurship training workshops. So these are not formal, they are just sessions where we talk about different topics of entrepreneurship. There's also mentoring. We also have an opportunity for networking. We have we curate specific topics around networking sessions, and then we also assist in funding where we can. Some of the projects that formed part of our incubation got funding, but we also have a boot camp that we hold once at the end of the year, where there's prize money to be won by the student entrepreneurs. So for instance, this year alone, we received 248 applications, but we only selected 65 because not all the projects out of the 248 were aligned to what we assist with in entrepreneurship. There are other entrepreneurship support mechanisms in the university, by the way. And so when I say aligned, for us, we look at entrepreneurship projects which have some potential protectable IP, because we're set up as a tech transfer office, so IP is very important in our offering. 58% of these projects that we are incubating are male, and 42% are female. And we try to strike a balance between the two so that it's not one-sided. So we'd like to see more participation from a wide number of students. And this is when we are having the induction program. Yeah, those are the 65 participants we had this initial discussion with before they commence there. And I can't believe it's already November next week, and they're going to be ending. And they've been with us for the past 8 months. Okay, so some of them are doing some interesting things, like we've got Prishen is working on a AI scan for detection of molecules that can, or date rape drugs that can be found in spiked drinks. We've got students, a student like Nobutu working on she's from the logistics department. They're working on an app that can do roadside assistance. I mean, I'm not going to talk about all of them, this five, but this is just to show that they're from different areas doing different things. Um, okay, so, okay, maybe that's not so necessary. Okay, yeah, so at the end, we have like this boot camp where we do 5 days, end of November after exams. We assist and we give tools, templates, presentations, and they can do pitches. We partner with the company from Spain. They come down, we call Mashari, and offer this training to our entrepreneur projects, and they get prize money. Sometimes students also get an opportunity. Okay, this was not our program, but the students that are here that went to China were from our program. So when they were looking for entrepreneurial projects that could go and form part of the delegation that the VC went to China, they looked towards our program and asked, do we have any potential names? And some of our students were there in that cohort. So because we have a close tie with other programs, you can also link up some of the projects with those that have opportunities. But also, there's also like projects that we enter into competitions. Like for instance, this one was by an inventor from the botany and plant biotechnology department in the Faculty of Science. So they're working on a test kit that can be for on-site setting for the quality of barley that can be used in brewing. And this project, by the way, it won first prize in Gauteng, which was quite a very big achievement. And it's one and this particular project has patent granted in different countries in the continent. So and we assisted with filing the patent, of course. And now the researchers really considering looking at forming a spin-out company. And there's also a project from the biochemistry department. It was a professor was working on indigenous knowledge, where they're doing plant extracts based on the knowledge they gained in the area. So not only did this project also enter the gap bio competition, but it also raised over 14.9 million from TIA to establish a center, which is not established yet, by the way, because centers are very specific in UJ. You have to apply for that. But anyway, it's to sort of see the possibility of doing that and can help the community in preserving their knowledge through a herbarium and buying equipment that can help with setting up the center one day when it exists to be an extension of what this particular plant extract was, and try to find other plant extracts and increase the research output and portfolio, but hopefully can commercialize and have more entrepreneurial activities coming from that. So at the end of the day, what we try to do is we center three things into our incubation, although there are other things beyond this, but we help with business development, product development, and then network and marketing. And we hope that in all of this, three elements, although we've broken it into 6 services, but these three elements, when they work in conjunction, they can give a very effective output in terms of the nature of entrepreneurs that can come from the university. We help with, in the business development side, we help with the value proposition development. So we try to make you understand what's important to the market, so that you can identify the problem. But once you've identified it, you can then have the solution. So which would be the being able to state the offering in terms of what your technology or research will try to do together with the benefits that it will hold. And of course, as indicated, there's maker spaces that we have, which is a collaborative workspace inside a school or library or public facility that can make learning that can be for making, learning, and exploring, um, and sharing the use of high tech to no tech tools. So we have one of those here at UJ in the form of it. And in fact, there's also another one run by the library in Doornfontein campus if you're in DFC. We have one here at the Tech Transport office as well. And this one is a picture of one of another makerspace in another university. We've got 3D printers and filaments and can prototype. Stellenbosch also has one, so it's not necessarily uh, something unique to UJ. It's just to display that. More, in fact, it's a trend now. Universities more and more are setting up these facilities. Okay, so maybe on the last element of the business support, I will talk about the business plan. So eventually, if you have this IP, you have this support mechanisms that you now are aware of, you will have to develop a business plan, because without a business plan or a business case, then you don't have much to offer to the market. So we take you through that. So I indicated we have these um, facilitation workshops. So these facilitation workshops that we do on entrepreneurship topics, we try to help you build a business case. So being able to understand what your business idea is, what the technology is, what the marketing strategy entails, how you're going to produce this when the time comes, what costs will be required or funding would be required to cover which costs and certain product or run the business. Who's going to run the business in terms of management? And I suppose eventually what are the risks and how can those be mitigated? And of course, the business idea would deal with what the concept is behind the business, what would be the business model that you plan to use. And on the financials, we try to take you through the process so you can make the right assumptions in terms of sales, pricing, growth, and the expenses, take into consideration inflation and so on. So these are projections that you'd have to make for the what would be the best case, what would be the base case, and what would be the worst case. So in building this, key data matters. So what would be your anticipated revenues? What would be your net profit margins and break-even analysis? And also important to know that when you're building your business, you have to understand that there's team dynamics and you can't do it sometimes alone. You might be good in the science, but somebody might be good in the commerce, and you might not necessarily be the one that would then have to run the business. Maybe your colleague who's more of a management scholar would probably be more suitable. So, because when people apply for funding, one of the things that the funders would want to know is there a well-rounded team? And if this is a technology-based business, is there a good mix of science, business, and intellectual property people involved? And eventually, you have to understand the risks and what would be the mitigation or the risk mitigation. Because it's at the end of the day, uh, every venture will have to understand that it might not work. So you have to understand what the risks are. And by the way, if the business fails, you didn't fail. So the business fails and you have to separate yourself from it. Okay, so but overall, if you want to embark on this entrepreneurial journey or entrepreneurship journey, just be well-rounded. Keep an open mind. Always try to learn new things. And as indicated, you never fail if the business fails. It's not you that fails, it's just the technology that failed. So, but at the end of the day, there's always a lesson learned, and I hope from these slides and presentation, there's something to take from that. And if there's any questions or any clarity that needs to be provided, I can do that in the next remaining time. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pumuza Langa, for the very insightful presentation on entrepreneurship for research. And to the participants, if there are questions for Dr. Pomoza, please, this is the time to, to raise your questions. If you do have any questions, you can raise your hand. You can raise your virtual hands. I've also allowed everybody's mic. So if you do have any questions regarding everything that you were speaking about, business entrepreneurships and the research, the support things that they have within their department, this is the time to actually raise the questions. So you can either type them in the chat box or you can raise your virtual hand. So I have allowed everybody's mic. If you do have a question, please kindly raise your hand. So Dr. Pomoza, this shows how very comprehensive your presentation was. You can see there isn't any questions or any comments from the participants. It means it was a very well-rounded presentation there by you, Dr. Pomoza. So is there no questions at all from the participants?
Well, I have a question then maybe if they haven't, sometimes colleagues are still warming up. So
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
is
yeah.
there anyone who's working on a research that might have potential entrepreneurship
Okay,
opportunity?
there is a question in the chat box. It says, "Good day, everybody. Thank you for the invaluable insights. I'd like to know if there's a business plan template we could use from your side."
Yeah, so what I can do is maybe they've got my email. I can send a link to, we use this Wadwani program that we have been given access to freely by them, and then they give. So it won't be just the template for the business plan because it's a process. It's one thing to just fill it in, but understanding the process of building your business case would be great. So I think that would be great to go through that. Then you can even better you can build your um, venture through that. It takes you through the process, so I can share that with them. Yeah.
Okay, now that's perfect. So Dr. Pomoza, you can share that and we can share it with the participants, or maybe you can also share the link. I don't know if you do have maybe in the chat box, but if you can also share it with us, then we will share it with the participants.
Mm. Okay, no, that's fine. But they're quite specific on how we onboard some of the colleagues. So I'd like to have the email, then I have a chat with them before I send them that link so that we know if they are going to do it fully. And if they have a project, because you have to list your project there, and then we build the business case from there. So you can
Okay, so,
send it to, they can send the email to me, and then I can interact with them. Yeah.
okay, so can I share your email in the chat box? Then they
Yeah, yeah,
can
yeah,
email.
yeah, sure.
Okay, so I will just share Dr. Pomoza's email in the chat box. Then you can email him directly if you also have any further questions from your side to all the participants. You did ask a question, Dr. Pomoza. Do you want to maybe reiterate that question? Maybe you want to ask it?
Yeah, no, I wanted to know if there's any uh, project or student that has a project that has potential entrepreneurial support requirements or can lead towards that direction.
Anyone from the participants who does have research that includes entrepreneurial support? Tough crowd we got here. Or maybe they're shy to speak, but I also said you can also, okay, there we go. Spesiche, you can unmute your mic and go ahead, speak.
Hi everyone. Yeah, I think we are just shy to speak. Um, I do have something, but it's a team of seven, so I'm registered for the postgraduate diploma in business admin with JBS, and in one of the assignments we came up with an incredible idea, which the prof was encouraging us to take forward. So we are still trying to figure out how we want to go about it, but we do have some blockchain idea that could potentially change things within the government systems. But yeah, we on my side, my team and I have something.
Okay, no, that's fine. I mean, we are seeing a trend from the business school where some of the projects which are part of either their capstone project for the MBA projects. Okay, I suppose for you it's a syndicate. If it's a group, it's what the syndicate assignment.
Correct.
So yeah, I mean that's good to know some of them are coming from those projects. What is interesting is that the the business school sometimes students sometimes are not necessarily from any particular technical area. They could be from management and so on. So the question would be then who's going to develop the app or this lecture? It gets a bit more tricky. And do you have the facility and the infrastructure for that? And then that's where maker spaces or prototyping facilities would come in play.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Pumuza. I hope you answered the specific. Thank you so much. Is there any further questions? Okay, Mutivi, you can unmute your mic and go ahead.
Hello, Doctor. Thank you very much for the presentation. Very insightful, very interesting as well. So I just wanted to ask I think we all have good ideas here, but in your experience and your point of view, what do you think qualifies as a good idea? Because in the context of, especially in the context of South Africa, because in America, maybe a good idea would be something that can get a lot of users and thus lend to more customers and a profit. Or in the case of China, it's probably a developmental goal, uh, like a company like BYD that makes cars and provides employment. What do you think qualifies as a good idea here in South Africa and can scale and get investors' interest as well?
Yeah, I mean it's not country specific in my mind. It's just at the end of the day, it's about potential users. We're all in this just for the end of the day for users. So if it solves a problem for a user group, and whether it makes, well, of course, mostly we want revenue generating technologies, but sometimes can have social impact. So it whatever it is, if it has utility and it can be have potential customers at the end of the day, or it can make impact, that's what matters in my mind.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you so much. And thank you for the presentation.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much, Mutivi. Are there any further questions from the participants? Okay, in that regard, just a reminder to the participants who have joined us today to please kindly fill in the feedback survey in the chat that I've shared in the chat, the evaluation link. I have shared it in the chat. So please kindly fill it out just to see how we can also improve and also to provide some kind words to our facilitator. In that regard, if there are no further questions, from the participant, I would just like to commend you, Dr. Pumuza, for a well-structured and engaging facilitation of this session. Really, really do appreciate it so much. Your approaches also encouraged us, to also, engage in this entrepreneurship for researchers. And thank you for guiding us through this important topic with clarity as well. And to all the participants, thank you so much For those who have joined us today, thank you so much for your presence. And we really do appreciate your presence here at the Research Capacity Development Unit. And to you, Dr. Phumuza Langa, thank you for your continued supporting the Research Capacity Development Unit. And with that, I think if there are no further questions, Dr. Phumuza, is there some final words you'd like to leave us with before we can end the session?
No, not much except to say thanks for your time and for your engagements. Hopefully we can engage further in the email as well.
Okay, now perfect. To the participants, I have shared again Dr. Phumuza's email, so you can also engage with him via email. If you think maybe you are shy to engage now, you can always just email him, and I'm sure he will be available to assist. And also, please kindly just a reminder to fill in the feedback survey there. With that regard, now I will be ending the session. Thank you so much for joining us today, and enjoy the rest of your day further. Thank you and have a good day. Thank you. Bye.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
bye.
Sure.